The Nesher is an Israeli fighter based on the French Mirage 5 and now flies in War Thunder. Let's check it out.
Hey folks, this is Tim's buddy Redcap. I took Tim's viewer survey, and it gave my life deep spiritual meaning. It is only one question long, multiple choice, and takes less than a minute. Right-click and open it in a new tab, and the link is in the description. Go down there, print it up now.
The story behind the Israeli aircraft industry's Nesher could be a miniseries spy drama, and there are multiple conflicting reports of how exactly this aircraft came to even exist. The background was an arms embargo against Israel in 1969. Israel had a pending order for the new Mirage 5, but this was disrupted by the embargo. That's where the plot thickens. One version of the story claims that the Neshers were actually built in France and shipped to Israel secretly in crates marked as farm equipment. Another version of the story claims that the Mossad, Israel's spy agency, covertly acquired the plans for the Mirage 5 through a spy operation. Yet another version claims that the French aviation designer Marcel Dassault secretly gave Israel not only the plans for the Mirage 5, but also production jigs and tooling. A fourth story claims that an American aerospace company manufactured these aircraft covertly in the United States before delivering them to Israel in kit form. Whatever the truth of it all, the Nesher entered service in 1971 with the Israeli Air Force. The Nesher used an almost identical airframe to the Mirage 5, but its internal components were pretty different. In particular, the weapon system and avionics. The Middle East climate meant that some changes to the cooling system for the electronics had to be made, and also some minor changes for compatibility with Israeli-made weapons. The plane made a pretty good showing of itself in the Yom Kippur War in 1973, having shot down over 100 enemy aircraft, although it was retired soon after as newer designs were becoming available. A number of upgraded Neshers were sold to Argentina, where they saw service in the Falklands War and managed to damage 6 British warships. These aircraft were further upgraded in the 1980s and served all the way until 2015. The Nesher we have in War Thunder is an odd specimen. In reality, the Nesher's weapon system removed the air interception radar and relied on heat-seeking missiles for air combat. It also expanded its air-to-ground targeting system, allowing for precision airstrikes. But in War Thunder, we have kind of the opposite. The Cyrano radar set is still installed, and there's no ballistics computer of any kind. Confounding this further is the lack of a radar warning receiver or any countermeasures. For weaponry, the loadouts give a healthy selection of bombs, rockets, gun pods, and missiles in different combinations. But again, no ballistics computer for any of it. Another omission, in real life, the Nesher was compatible with the Luz air-to-surface missile, but we don't have that in War Thunder. The first guided missile is the Shafrir 2. It's a basic infrared missile, and you'll want to upgrade from it pretty quickly. The first follow-on is the AIM-9D, which has a smaller warhead, but it tracks and flies better than the Shafrir. The final upgrade is the AIM-9G, which is an excellent weapon with strong performance. This is going to be your go-to missile once it's unlocked. The flight performance of the Nesher is similar to other jets in the Mirage family. Great top speed, decent acceleration, fast and tight turn performance, and a good rate of climb. The catch is that it bleeds speed very quickly in sustained maneuvers, which is a familiar quirk if you've flown any of the other Delta Wing jets. As always, carrying external weapons will hurt the plane's performance, and it's worth mentioning that the combination of missiles and gun pods in those couple of loadouts is sure to get a lot of players excited, but taking the gun pods reduces the turn performance of the Nesher by a noticeable margin. Just something to keep in mind. Flying the Nesher into missions requires a little more care than some other top-tier jets. At BR 10.3, this thing gets paired up into 11.3 matches just as often as it gets paired down, and the lack of a radar warning receiver is a massive handicap. With more fighters available having high-performance semi-active radar missiles, I had the unique experience in the Nesher of sometimes just flying along with no enemies in sight, and then randomly exploding with no warning at all, no idea what hit me or where it even came from. So that's fun. And combined with the lack of countermeasures, the Nesher ends up having a very low survivability. The lack of a ballistics computer dramatically limits how effective the plane can be at ground pounding. The thing gets a really strong selection of loadouts, but flying out with bombs or rockets almost feels like wasted potential. Now, I'm sure there are some unicorns out there who will drop comments about how they can routinely get accurate bomb drops at 700 kilometers an hour in any altitude without a ballistics computer just coming out of a roll or whatever. But the majority of players are going to have a lot of trouble using this as a strike fighter, which, if I'm being honest, is kind of annoying since it was supposed to be a strike fighter. This means that the primary mission profile of the Nesher is usually going to be just as another close-in dogfighter using its 2 missiles and internal cannons. The good news is that it can be pretty good at that role, but the lack of countermeasures does hold it back a bit. Overall, I have to say that I'm honestly very disappointed in how they implemented this plane. In real life, the Nesher had an outstanding service record, but in War Thunder, I get the feeling this plane's stats are going to be in the dumpster unless they fix the omissions with the avionics. Visually, the Nesher, well, it kind of looks like a Mirage. Go figure. I like the Delta Wing design, but the only paint job available is the basic Israeli 3-color camo pattern. Not a bad paint job, but there's only one choice. For the curious, the yellow triangles were painted on in order to more easily distinguish between Israeli aircraft and Mirage fighters from nations in the region that they might have been fighting against. I kind of wish we got an Argentine Air Force paint job for this, but unfortunately we don't get one. Landing the Nesher is basically the same as landing other Mirage series jets. No landing flaps, but it has effective air brakes and a drag chute. You can drop the landing gear at a little over 400 kilometers an hour, and if you haven't had any experience landing Delta Wing jets before, it's worth practicing a few times in test flights. The cockpit has pretty good visibility, and the instruments are easy to find. There isn't a radar scope, because this plane isn't supposed to have radar, and no radar warning receiver. Otherwise, not a bad cockpit, and I had fun flying it out in VR. To close out on the Nesher, this jet has lots of strong weapons, good engine performance, and excellent maneuverability. However, no radar warning receiver or countermeasures of any kind, no ballistics computer, and having only 2 air-to-air missiles on a plane that gets limited to a dogfighting role most of the time is a pretty serious handicap. The final verdict on this plane is that, as it currently sits in the game, the Nesher is totally off meta. The low survivability is a massive shortcoming, and the technical errors with its implementation hold back its potential. I don't think this is going to be very popular with the player base unless it gets patched. As always, thanks for watching.